Hey there, darlings. Welcome to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess, if you're new here, and if you're not new here, welcome back. Today I'm standing here in front of my new tea garden right outside my house. I am so loving this space. We just really finished this project in the last week or two, got it all planted, and now the things are growing. Today I want to talk to you kind of about all of the info about what went into this garden. Every time I'm shot content out here, I have people saying, where'd you get the fence? Tell me about the greenhouse. What's up with these beds? So today I want to tell you all of those details. First, as a disclaimer before I start, when I do a video that's kind of focused on a lot of products, I like to make sure you understand you don't have to buy stuff in order to garden. With some will and determination, you can definitely scrap together a really good garden. We've made lots of videos over the years of making garden beds over found materials. Of course, our big glass greenhouse is made out of repurposed materials. It can be done, but I understand that some people are looking for products, and as a person who really loves product reviews and relies on them heavily when I make decisions, I like to share my experience with things. So one thing I'm still on the hunt for is the right outdoor furniture set. I'm going to put a little seating area in here. So I guess I'm saying it's done. There's one finishing touch there that's not quite done. I guess first things first, let's talk about this fence. This has probably been the thing that has been the most asked about. So when we first started talking about building a little garden down by the house, I knew I wanted it to be fenced for one main reason. I wanted to be able to keep my dogs out of here, simply because I do not want my dog peeing on my garden stuff. This is not a deer-proof fence or anything like that, obviously. It's just a cute little low fence. I'm sure that rabbits could get underneath it if they wanted to. Of course, I've got raised beds in here, so that's kind of irrelevant. But it does serve the purpose that I was looking for, which is to keep my dog out. And it also provides just a really lovely boundary and line for the garden. When you are designing any sort of outdoor spaces, any sort of garden, having boundaries and lines really goes a long way into making the spaces look finished and beautiful and purposeful. I've kind of always had a thing for picket fences. I've always loved them. I've never had one ever. So this has been kind of on a list to put a picket fence around a garden forever, but with my really big gardens, it just wouldn't be economical, so we've never done that. So when we were doing this little one, I was like, oh, could I please have a picket fence? Another thing that heavily went into the consideration of choosing this fence was that we had a really long list of other projects that needed to be done. So we were looking something that could be put up really quick, and that could be moved and reconfigured if we decided in the future that we wanted to do something different with the space. So we did some research. Maya found this product at Lowe's, and I read a lot of reviews. I will put a link to it. I'll tell you exactly what it's called. It's called Yard Link Cedar Dog Ear Spaced Picket Fence No Dig Panels. And then they also have these little posts, and the way this fence goes in is it has like a little anchor point that you pound into the ground. It's pretty simple to put in, and then you slide the post down in once you've got it even, and then you just slide these panels on top of it. So this was super simple to put together. Of course, Maya did like pop lines to make sure that everything was straight and square. They have multiple different options of this. Like, this is a picket fence. They have some that are like metal and different ones. They have different gate options. You do have to buy each piece separately, and it was fairly pricey. But a little shopping tip, a conversation came up in our Facebook group where people were talking about this fence and asking about it. And people started discussing how much it was where they lived. And I was seeing that some people, the price was like $10 more a piece than it was in other places. So if you are like situated in a place that you may have multiple Lowe's stores around you, definitely compare prices at each store. Because if you could save $10 a piece, that would probably probably be worth driving like an extra hour if you need to. The cost of this fence is ultimately what led me to placing my beds a little closer together though. I knew I wanted to get as much planting space around here as I could, and obviously when you're laying your beds out, you have to decide how you're going to maintain your walkways. And in the past, we've always spaced our beds out enough that we could get a mower in between them, but in this garden, I actually put them so close together that it will require being weed eated. But it was kind of that or spread them out and have to buy, you know, several more panels of fencing. And considering it is a relatively small space, I just went with the weed eating route. We do a lot of weed eating anyway, so I kind of figured what's a little more. Now, obviously, I cannot attest to the longevity of the fence because we have just put this together. However, I can say that it was very easy to put together. It is not the sturdiest fence in the world, but it is definitely sturdy compared to a lot of other temporary fencing options that I see that just stake into the ground. I have made sure my children understand don't climb on it, but as far as keeping the dog out, I think it's going to do that job for a really long time, as well as look beautiful and make my little picket fence loving heart happy. So the next thing that I'll touch on are the garden beds. These are Birdie's beds that I got from Epic Gardening. This kind of video always ends up getting new viewers that have never seen our content before. So hi, I'm really glad you're here. The people who have been here very much know this about me. The people who haven't may not. And I feel like anytime you're watching a product video, there's kind of that feeling, especially, you know, today with the way content goes, of is this person just trying to sell me something? I do disclose the relationships that I have. I do have an affiliate code for Birdie's beds, but all of my affiliate codes of products that I review are things that I have happily spent money on. Things like Defense, I don't have an affiliate code. This is really just because I love reviews and information. However, I will tell you that today I'm going to talk about these beds. I just got an email yesterday doing like their big Memorial Day sale this weekend. It only goes for, you know, a handful of days. I'll put a link to that. So Birdie's beds are all metal construction. They're put together with screws that come in a little wrench that comes with the kit. Of course, you can use a drill to make it go faster. I don't have any sort of construction experience or expertise at all. That is Jeremiah's forte. And my son Asher and I put together all the beds in here. There are quite a few companies at this point that make this style of bed, these metal style beds. I have tried others as well, and I find the products to be relatively comparable. The reason why I ended up switching to Birdie's was because they're made in Australia. The company's owned by a fellow gardening content creator, so I really love to be able to support the endeavors of people who are enriching the gardening world. But also the customer service through Epic Gardening is great. You know, you're not going to have any issues with that, and that's important to me. You know, whenever I have promoted things in the past, whenever I hear anybody saying that they're having any sort of like negative customer service experience, I'm definitely going to back off of that, because I don't want to send anybody to spend their money in a place that's not going to honor that. So with the Birdie's beds, I have 2 large beds. I have 5 medium beds, that's what these are, and then I have 3 small ones. So the configurations that I've chosen are here. I've got 3 by 3 foot beds. The 5 mediums are configured as 7 by 2 foot beds, and the 2 larges are configured at 10 by 2 foot. All of these beds, they come in the 3 different sizes. That just determines how many pieces you get to put together, and each one has like several different configurations that you can use. Actually, I just peeped this in the greenhouse. So here's an example, like this is the instruction sheet. And like the large beds can be configured in multiple different ways, like a 6x4, 8x4, 6x6, 8x2, 10x2. And you can actually buy multiple kits and put them together and make much longer beds. Now, I have the short version here. These are, I think they're 15 inches tall. They also make a tall version that comes up about hip width on me. I've got a few of those up in my big garden that have Jerusalem artichokes in them. And of course the tall beds are great if you have any sort of like back issues and have a hard time bending over. You can fill those halfway up with like branches and leaves and stuff like that, and then do soil on top, so you don't have to be intimidated about filling it entirely with soil. I chose the shorter beds for this. Garden is a little bit on the smaller side. Of course the barn is the backdrop, and so I kind of wanted everything a little bit lower. I didn't want it all super tall obstructing the view. to the barn and the pasture. This color, I believe it's called clay. I went with them all the same. They do have other colors. Now, the reason why I like these beds, one, they are movable. Like, obviously you've got soil in them and it is a pain in the butt to move a lot of soil. But these are really great if you are renting and say you're going to be there for a couple years and you want to have a garden, but you don't want to build something that you're going to have to tear apart. This is really great because you can take the soil out of these, unassemble them, or even just take them into a couple of pieces and move them to another place and refill them. The other thing is just the longevity. Metal beds like this, I think they say that they expect them to be able to last for like 20 plus years, and I would say that that's accurate. The ones that I have that are like years old, you can't tell that they're years old at all. They stand up to the weather just fine, and that makes the investment definitely nice if you're going to get a nice long growing time out of it. And then of course the last thing is just the ease of use. Because we had such a long to-do list this spring and I knew I wanted to do this garden, but I didn't want to put another thing on my carpenter husband's list of saying, hey, can you build me all of these beds, because he had a lot of other things to do. I knew that if I did this for this garden, I would more or less be able to put this together by myself, and that's what we did. So it doesn't look like a whole lot now because I just put these plants in, I mean, a week and a half ago, something like that. But if you'll come back in a few months, this is going to be really awesome. This will be very, very full, very lush. This is all herbs and plants for herbal tea. That's what I filled this whole garden up with. And I'm so excited for this to all fill out and be what I'm envisioning. Next, let's talk about the little greenhouse. So the need that I purchased this to fulfill was that we built this really big, beautiful, repurposed window greenhouse that my husband, you know, came up with the plan and pieced together with all these windows that we found, obviously secondhand. And it's amazing, but on really cold nights, because of the pitch of the roof and just how big it is, it really just doesn't hold heat well, and it's very difficult to heat. So late in the spring, it's absolutely perfect for growing all my seedlings out. But the very late parts of winter, where we're getting our harder freezes, but I need to be starting like my peppers and my tomatoes. That greenhouse was proving to be a real issue, and I was having to tote many trays of plants back into my house regularly, and it was a lot. So we had troubleshot that for a couple of years, and then we decided, you know what, let's just do something a little different. Let's put this down close to the house. I was in Costco one day and I saw this. I've seen it there for years, and I've had a lot of people ask me if I could recommend like a backyard greenhouse kit for people who don't have, you know, skills or a handy spouse who can build them something. And of course I hadn't needed anything, so I didn't really have a recommendation, but I figured maybe I could meet my needs with this and come up with some good information for you guys. So I purchased this at Costco. It's made by Yardistry, and I think you can buy these greenhouse kits directly from Yardistry, but I think they're significantly cheaper if you're able to get them in the spring at Costco. Now, my Costco here in South Carolina has this thing still, but it is significantly marked down. So keep an eye out, you know, if you're able to buy it at the end of the season and potentially put it together and use it next season, you may be able to save some money. This is the smaller kit. They have an 8x10 also. This is, I believe it's 7x8. It is plenty of space for what I needed it for, and I think for a lot of people this would be plenty of space. You can actually configure it differently. Now I put the door on the side and then the vent up on this side, and then on the opposite side there's a window that opens on that end. You can actually build this with the door on the end and the big window on the side. It has instructions for both. I just liked this layout for my garden. So if you put the door on the end, this shelf comes over and is against this wall here. And then that window is also against that wall. So the greenhouse kit itself, I cannot review the construction of that. Jeremiah is the one who built this, but he did put a video up over on his channel, Maya's Workshop, kind of going through his construction and a couple of the things that he changed. I'll put a link to that if you are interested in this. We've read a lot of reviews about this greenhouse, and a lot of the things that people who had it for a handful of years suggested to do. Like, I know he put a little extra frame down underneath here to get it up off the ground. He used treated lumber for that, and that allowed kind of a footprint to be able to put some gravel and some pavers down in here. Of course, this will help hold heat whenever it is cold outside, and it just also makes it neater and tidier. Now, during the winter, whenever it was really cold, I just used a little radiant space heater right here to heat this, and that worked brilliantly. It was absolutely enough here where I live. Jeremiah did use extra caulk to seal this even more. I think it came with 3 cans, and maybe he ended up using 6. So he did buy a few extra cans of caulk. One thing he did was he added this to the window because there wasn't anything to prop it open, and I would come and open it whenever the greenhouse needed extra venting. I was always concerned that it was going to get blown shut and then get a little too hot in here. It did come with one to prop open the front door though, so that was included, that we added. It does have one window vent on it, and this has that expanding wax stuff that basically when the greenhouse gets to a certain temperature, that automatically pops open, and it has a little net to keep insects from coming in. Now, if you are new to greenhouse growing, you might not know this, but greenhouse growing is not hands-off. You need to be prepared to be just heavily involved and observant if you are starting seedlings in a greenhouse, because while that vent window is really good on some days, if you are growing in a place that gets really sunny and even slightly warm during late winter or early spring, this greenhouse can get really hot really fast. And even with that little vent window, there were days that I definitely needed to come out and open this window or prop open the door a little bit to keep the temperature in here from exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit or like 38 Celsius. So it's definitely something that you need to watch, but I would say this doesn't behave any different than any other greenhouse that I've used. At this point, this is the 4th greenhouse that I have grown in my experience of being a gardener. 1 was a Harbor Freight kit. 2 have been window greenhouses that we pieced together from repurposed windows, and then this one. This by far holds heat very, very well. With that being the case, it can get a little hot, and therefore it needs to have a little help in regulating. Thankfully, what I got to do is, as the spring was kind of warming up and I was concerned it may be too hot during the days, I just would come out here and automatically open the window. And I had an alarm for myself that I would come out in the evening and automatically close it up because we were still freezing at night. Oh, there are these 2 shelves that come with it. They are wide enough to set 10 by 20 trays on this way, or of course you could go this way. Obviously you can fit more if you fit them long ways. These are hanging off a little bit, which can make it just a touch unsteady, so you need to be mindful. This shelf along the top is really, really narrow, and honestly, I had thought when I bought this that I might be able to put some plants and stuff up there, but that's where I kept like my watering can, you know, any seeds that I was working with. When I was out here and I had a mug, I would set it up there. So it was definitely nice to have that surface, but I wouldn't necessarily account for that in the seeds you're planning on starting. Let's see, can you fit? You can fit a 10 by 20 tray there, so you could use it. But of course, you'd have to get up on something to be able to see in there and, you know, see the water level and all of that. So one of the questions I got a lot about the Costco greenhouse was, how many seedlings do you think you could effectively start in there? So I was able to fit about 9 of these trays in here, and each one of these trays holds 32 little 2.5-inch cups. And so you could do the math on that as far as if you're just starting 1 seedling per cup. Now, how I used this was I start a whole lot of, I'll put like 10 tomato seeds in 1 cup. And then when they get their first true leaves, I'll separate them out into separate cups. So I called this my nursery greenhouse because this is where I initially started a lot of stuff. And by the time I was up potting, it was warm enough for me to use my other greenhouse. You'll see me use this a lot more like next December, January, because that's when this is really going to shine, when I'm starting smaller batches of like brassicas to go out in the late winter garden and stuff like that. All of that's going to happen in here. Plus, one thing I will likely do over the winter is grow salad greens in here because I can just pop right out of the house and grab them. Now, I bought this little shelf. I got this on Amazon, and It is a good size for right here. Maya secured it with some little brackets because I have had cats out here climbing on stuff and we don't want anything getting turned over, obviously. It's a little small, like a 1020 tray does not fit on this shelf. I will put a link to this shelf, but if you want something to really expand your space as far as having trays, you may want to get one that's a little bit bigger. But I did end up really using this. As you can see, it's nice to have storage here to keep things out of the way. Some of my smaller trays fit really well in here, and of course you can put pots and stuff like that over here. For me, my main reasoning for this was wanting to be able to have storage, exactly what you're seeing right here. This is cedar, so I'm really hoping that, like with the cedar fence, the cedar greenhouse, I'm hoping that we get like years and years out of them. One thing that we talked about doing is doing some sort of coating on this to give it further weatherproofing. Maya had kind of planned on doing that this year, but we were having just such a wet late winter and early spring, and I really needed to start seeds. So he kind of set me loose, told me to go ahead and use it, and that he would come in after the fact and coat this with some sort of protective coating. So Maya's review, after being the one to actually construct the greenhouse, was that he was very impressed with the kit. He said, you know, as a carpenter, the kit was very well put together. It was easy to follow the instructions. And of course, I know that his carpentry skills definitely came in handy putting this together, but he said that a person without super extensive carpentry skills would probably be able to do it just fine. Now, as a gardener, at the end of my first like seed starting season with it, I would say that it is definitely like a good option for seed starting for a gardener. Even a person who doesn't have greenhouse experience and a person who's just trying to get started with that, I think that you could very well manage this and have success with it. I think the fact that it holds heat so well is amazing, but then things like that auto opening window is just a really nice touch for a person who may accidentally forget to vent their greenhouse, and I think that's going to help. And then with your partnership and your attentiveness, being able to open and close that big window, being able to add a fan in if you need to. I just think that this could be a really great greenhouse for a lot of people. I think it could serve a lot of people's needs. And if you needed more space, I've also read very similar good reviews over the one that's a step up from this, that's 8 by 10. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what else people have asked me about. My giant rooster. This is Jean-Luc Peckyard, named after my Trekkie husband, and the last name was refined by our comment section. This is my Mother's Day gift this year. He's from Tractor Supply. They do these big metal roosters there, and I've seen them for years. I've always thought they were really funny, but you know, the one with the flowers on it, I guess just was singing my name to my family. I think he's adorable. And then of course here I've got my lovely green stalk all decked out. I had several viewers ask me, because you know I grow multiple things in green stalks. You know, obviously I don't really need the space, but there are certain things I really like growing in them, like salad greens and strawberries, things that stay clean up off the ground. But several people asked me if I would grow one green stalk as if it was my only one and try to grow as much in it as possible this year, and that's what this is. And as you can see, I am understanding that assignment. I've got lots of tomatoes. There's some more. I've got some really pretty dino kale. Here we have some cucumbers kind of starting to climb over onto the support. Even more tomatoes. I'm actually really shocked at how many tomatoes there are. We've already harvested maybe like 12 little cherry tomatoes off of here that were ripe. There are none now because my son Ben has figured it out, and he's been coming out here and stripping them every day that there's a new ripe one. I put beans along the bottom tier. Got a few beets in here, and of course some flowers for good measure. Overall, I'm really thrilled with how this looks. I've done really extensive green stalk reviews in the past. I'll put links to those if you want more information, kind of talking about the tips and the tricks and the troubleshooting. But this thing is serving as a really good testament for how well they can do. Alright, so yeah, those are the details of my little tea garden. I wanted to have all of those details in one place because when I just pop in here for a video and people start asking all those questions, I want them to have thorough answers. I did plant a couple of arbor roses right here, Jasmina arbor roses. They're really pretty pink climbing roses, and we're gonna build like a simple arbor to go over the gate here, so the roses will cover that. And then I do also have this little trellis here. I got this at Costco also. I think it was like a 18 something. It was on closeout, so I'm not sure if you're gonna find those. But I also live in the South, so they close out the garden stuff sooner here than they will at other places. But I've got butterfly pea seeds in the ground right there, so that'll end up being covered. And I'm waiting on one rose to come in over here in this corner. Also, I'm on the hunt for just the right furniture to go here. I'm kind of thinking I would like to do like metal gliders. They don't have to be vintage, because at this point, if you can find the vintage ones, they're usually very expensive if they're in good shape. But I would love a set of like a cute metal glider, you know, love seat, maybe a little chair. If you've got any suggestions for me as far as furniture for my little tea garden, I would love to hear what you've had a good experience with. But I hope this helps. I definitely am a person who reads lots of reviews and have been spared, I think, from a lot of frustrating situations where I'm about to purchase something and then I read, this was awful to put together, this is, you know, this is junk, it broke within a week, and stuff like that. But I like to be able to put my 2 cents in and hopefully help you the same way other reviewers have helped me. Thank you for hanging out with me today and all the days you do. I bless you. Until next time.